There was a security station a little further down, and given that we had already started killing beings who worked in this compound, it seemed a bit late to go with the subtle approach. After I made sure Volonic had put his PPB pistol on stun, we shot the 2 guards and dragged them away from their posts, sticking them in an empty room. This station had an actual computer console, and using a hacking tool that Audule Ip had provided for my data bracelet, I bypassed the password prompt and was able to pull up data on the prisoners. There were hundreds of prisoners being held in various parts of the facility, but only 6 in the building with nanotech labs. Hopefully, that meant everyone I was looking for was nearby and in one place. Unfortunately, the prisoners weren't labeled, and if there were cameras monitoring them, I couldn't figure out how to access them. I was going to have to open each cell and look inside. I'd been so intent on getting to this point, I hadn't allowed myself to worry about what everyone might have been through. Had they been tortured? Experimented on? Planet Pleasant was notorious for that sort of thing. I had known from the beginning that I might manage to make my way inside and not like what I found. If my friends had been truly hurt, if the Fads had done something to Tamret, I wasn't sure I would be able to deal with it. I told Volonic to keep watch. We needed to know if someone was coming, but I also didn't want him around. I needed to do this on my own. I reached the first cell and keyed it open, my PPB pistol at the ready. Maybe it would be one of my friends. Maybe it would be a deranged lunatic, frothing at the mouth. I would face the worst if I had to, but I wouldn't think about it until then. The door clicked open and swung inward, revealing a small chamber with bare walls. There was a bathroom area in one corner and a cot against the wall, and little else. In the gloom of the unlit chamber, I saw a figure lying still on the cot. I crept forward, using the light of my bracelet to illuminate the form. It was Steve. He was on his side, wearing the tunic I'd last seen him in. There was a gentle rise and fall on his chest, indicating he was alive, but he didn't stir. I grabbed his shoulder and shook him gently. Nothing. Maybe they had sedated him. That was a possibility I hadn't considered. I gave him another shove, this one much rougher. Steve darted up, grabbed me under the armpits, and lifted me into the air. Still seeming to be asleep, he slammed my back up against the wall. Then, he paused to blink at me through his reptilian eyes. "Oi! It's you! Took you bloody long enough! Can you put me down?" I gasped. "You're kind of crushing my ribcage." "Sorry, mate," he said as he set me down. "You startled me." "Clearly they didn't hurt you," I said breathlessly. "What about the others?" "They did something to us, so our tech trees are shut down, but we're fine otherwise." He thought about it for a second. "Tamret's pretty ticked off." "Yeah, I'll bet, but I'm glad she's okay." "She is okay, isn't she?" "Yeah, we're all fine. They haven't let us sit about and chat, but we've seen each other passing in the hallways. And I would have been able to smell if there was anything seriously wrong. They left us alone. I mean, other than turning us into regular beings." I thought of the lab, and what I'd found there. "The powder?" Steve nodded. "Yeah, they blew some of that yellow nonsense in my face. I inhaled it without meaning to, and it was just switched off, yeah?" So Volonic had been right. Ardov must have somehow exposed me to the powder when we were fighting, and that was why my system shut down. The real question was if we could do anything to switch ourselves back on. I still had the blue powder on me, but I couldn't believe that the answer would be as simple as that. Still, in an emergency, if all else was lost, it was good to have a crazy last-ditch effort to give me hope. "What about the others?" I asked. He nodded. "Same with them. They're all back to being ordinary." I nodded. This was bad news, but if everyone was healthy, then things weren't as bad as I feared. "So, what's our plan then?" Steve asked. "How do we get out of here?" "One step at a time. Volonic and I snuck in, and we're making the rest up as we go along." "I'm surprised you haven't killed him." I looked at Steve. He's the one doing the killing. 2 guards that we could have just as easily stunned. Steve cocked his head. That's surprising. No kidding. He's darker than I thought. Steve let his tongue taste the air. Speaking of dark mammals, Ardov is still around here somewhere. If he catches wind of you, he's not going to play nice. Yeah, good point. Let's get the others and then improvise a way off this planet. This was easier said than done, and I knew it. The security apparatus on Planet Pleasant didn't seem all that interested in keeping out intruders, since the reputation of the place meant no one wanted to come here in the first place. The security setup was designed to make sure none of the staff, a bunch of phatic misfits and free thinkers, didn't escape with their technology or research. That meant, even though we'd made it this far, there was still a pretty good chance it was going to be a one-way trip. And all I'd done was hand myself over to my enemies. Steve had no idea who was in each cell, so I opened them in the order that I came to them. In the first one, I found Alice, who was in the process of sitting up as she heard the door open. She was still in her school uniform, which was now wrinkled, and she'd lost her tie. On the other hand, she was no longer in a coma. "You're okay," I said, rushing into the room. I kept my voice quiet, but I don't think she had any trouble mistaking my enthusiasm. She nodded.
"Yeah, they fixed me up when we got here. I guess they were able to undo whatever it was that they did to me in the first place."
She rubbed at her eyes sleepily.
"Zeke, what happened to you? Why did you leave the ship? Where did you go?"
"It's a long story," I said. "I never meant to ditch you guys, but I'll tell you the rest later." She nodded, pushing herself off her cot. "Alice," I said, "I'm sorry this happened to you. I didn't forget that you wanted to stay on Earth, but we couldn't leave you. You were hurt, and you would have been captured."
"I know," she said. "No one thinks you're running around doing whatever you feel like."
"That seems to be what everyone thinks," I told her.
"That's what they say,"
she told me.
"not what they think. Look, we're all frustrated and scared and angry. Everything we do puts us one step back. If me son, or I guess someone else, vents a little, you need to toughen up. They unload on you because you're the leader."
"I thought I was the leader," Steve said.
"Of course you are."
She patted his arm and turned back to me.
"If we were at home and things were normal, we'd be annoyed because our parents were telling us what to do. But we expect our parents to do exactly that, and if they stopped, we'd be terrified."
"But we're all supposed to be equal," I said.
"And we are,"
she said.
"But when we get into a jam, you usually tell us what to do."
"I make a suggestion," I said. "I don't want to be the leader. I just want to do what we need to make sure everyone is safe."
"Then maybe we should do that, instead of standing around talking about it,"
she said.
"Thinking too much just gets you into trouble,"
Steve said.
"I like to act first and then think about it later."
The next cell we came to contained Dr. Roop, who appeared mildly alarmed that I had broken into the Planet Pleasant facility, but somehow managed to keep himself from lecturing me on being foolish. After that, we got Charles, who was just happy there was a rescue underway. I opened the next cell, and there was Tamret, sitting on her bunk, like she'd been awake and waiting for something like this to happen. She looked at me, and her eyes went wide. I saw her twitch like she was about to leap up, but she held still. Her expression became dark.
"What happened to you?" she demanded. "How did you get off the ship?"
"I slipped into the escape pod to avoid Ardov, and to get a pistol," I explained. "Once the power came back on, Volonic jettisoned the pod before I could get a clear shot. After that, things got weird. I'll explain it later."
"That was good thinking on his part," Tamret said.
"No, it wasn't. He just panicked, that's all."
"Maybe so," she said. "But if he hadn't, we'd all be locked up here and none of us would ever be getting out."
That was probably true. Come to think of it, Volonic had stumbled into a number of fortunate blunders. I shoved the notion to the back of my mind as we all moved to the last cell, which I assumed held me son. Tamret, it seemed, was still angry with me. I thought about what Alice had said, but I wasn't sure that it made sense. Tamret was putting up walls, and I had no idea why. I also had no idea how I was going to find out if she wouldn't talk to me. We opened me son's cell, and she greeted me more warmly than Tamrat had, which maybe was a new low for me. "I hate this place," she said as she got off her cot and put her school blazer back on. "Let's get out of here." That seemed like a good idea to me. The major problem was that I had no idea how we could do that. I decided not to tell her that because Alice's words were weighing on me, and I didn't want to disappoint everyone. On the other hand, I was suddenly struck by the stupidity of this plan. Convex icosahedron had somehow encouraged me to break my way out of a facility specifically designed to prevent anyone from escaping, and I was now starting to feel like maybe I had walked into some kind of trap. I couldn't begin to guess what the purpose of the trap might be. Had Convex icosahedron been trying to get rid of me? I couldn't see why. He could have easily just ignored me. Could he have been working all along to deliver me to the hands of the Phatic Empire? If that was true, though, the Fads would already know I was here, and I would already be in custody. I had to conclude that he believed I could get off this planet. That meant there was a way to do it. Now I just had to figure it out.